Good morning, everyone. Are you having a good time? Yeah? Yes? Yes? So am I. I'm almost nostalgic that today's the last day of our forum already. My name is Suet-Fern, and I'm a corporate lawyer, and I chair the international leadership team at a law firm, Morgan Lewis and Bockius. But I'm here today as a member of the board of directors of the World Justice Project to welcome you and to introduce the last day of our forum, where we will showcase commitment to justice, and we hope to stimulate discussion on that topic. Conferences are great occasions. It's a chance to meet old friends, and I've met so many, and to make new networks and to learn about latest developments. Particularly in this era of virtual relationships, it's particularly important just sometimes to come together, to talk and find common ground and common objectives. For me, it's particularly humbling because I'm involved in my day job in a for-profit organization, and I love and I'm humbled when I meet each one of you who dedicate your lives, your energies, your talent to doing good, to creating access for justice to so many. Now, convening alone doesn't address the justice gap. And so this forum will attempt, and we've designed this forum actually to stimulate action towards justice for all. Now, this won't happen with this forum alone or any single event. Rather, it requires a series of events, building of constituencies and momentum. It actually requires all of you. It requires collective, collaborative efforts, such as we are amassing this week. It requires commitments for follow-on action from all of you, from each and every one of you. Today's theme is to challenge us to think also about what's next for access to justice, commitments to justice for all. What can we do? What are our commitments to justice? To preview the day, we have a plenary panel representing a whole diversity of perspectives on the justice agenda. The impressive commitments that each one of our panelists and their organizations have made will surely stimulate all of us to think about what we can and should do. This plenary session is followed by our final working session focused on our next steps. It will be a call to action and a call to arms. Where do we go to take our quest for justice from here? What is the cutting edge on online justice platforms? Criminal justice reform? How can we use the SDG review process and the open government partnership to advance the cause? What are the best practices in pro bono, in social enterprise, to bring new resources to the justice agenda? Now, just after lunch, we will have a special interview with a justice commitment in the making. Pooven Moodley of Natural Justice in South Africa will tell us about the work of his organization to find win-win justice solutions for a centuries-old problem of disenfranchisement and exclusion. It is a wonderful opportunity for all of us to learn about the making of a justice commitment. Now, for the perspicacious amongst you, you'll notice this is not in our printed program. We've updated it online, but please be there. And finally, our closing plenary will include announcements of the World Justice Challenge winners, highlights of more than 50 commitments to justice by WJP this week, and the presentation of our final forum declaration. We'll have a closing reception, It'll be a blast to mark the end of the forum and the beginning of much work to come. To help us think about commitments to justice, please join me in welcoming Elizabeth Andersen, our WJP Executive Director. Elizabeth, over to you.
Thank you very much, Fern, for that wonderful introduction to our day. We've got a lot of work to do, and we've got a wonderful panel to start us off this morning. It's a pleasure to be your moderator this morning and to stimulate some discussion about very good work on commitments that's going on in all of the organizations and institutions that are represented here. Our founder and CEO likes to admonish us from time to time that our conferences must not be just a gab fest. We are going to convene a forum of action. That was our task, and that is what we have been about. And I'm really delighted to say that I think we've been successful this week in gathering people together who are ready to make a commitment to justice. We are very much conscious of the fact that we've got a huge challenge. 5 billion people who don't have access to justice. And in order to bridge that justice gap, we need a collective, collaborative effort on behalf of a diversity of organizations and institutions. And many different kinds of action are needed. We have come to think about this set of actions at WJP in terms of 5 R's. Research about the size of the justice gap, the nature of the justice gap, and what are the solutions. Reforms to change laws and institutions to better serve people. Respect for rights to realize justice for citizens. Resources to fund these efforts. And finally, reporting to hold ourselves accountable. And we have, in this group here on the stage, examples of all of those 5 R's, and I'm eager to ask them a bunch of questions and stimulate a discussion among us so that you can hear the exciting work that's being done and join in the conversation as well. They will share their commitments, how they got those commitments out of their institutions, marshaled the political will and the support for them. Importantly, how do we translate commitments into action? And I'm really pleased to introduce them to start this conversation. On my far left here, we have Saskia Bruines, the Deputy Mayor of The Hague. Next to Saskia, we have Diani Sadiawati, the Senior Advisor to the Minister of Planning of Indonesia. I think maybe after the Netherlands, there may be the largest delegation from Indonesia of any country here this week. Next to Diani, we have Monica Mhoja, who is the Country Director for Landesa in Tanzania. And to her right, we have Marc Reverdin, who's the Secretary General of the Paris Peace Forum. And finally, to my immediate left is Gérardine Escolar, who is the first secretary of the Permanent Secretariat of the Hague Conference on Private International Law. So many different perspectives and experiences on making commitments to justice represented here. Let's start in on our conversation. And Saskia, if I may begin with you. We are hearing a lot about interesting initiatives coming from cities around the world on the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'd be interested in your perspective from the mayor's office and why cities should be involved in the SDGs, and what are some of the things that the City of The Hague is doing to advance the justice agenda in particular?
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. Good morning, everyone. It's a very good question you are asking, and I'd like to tell you something about what is going on in The Hague. And I'd like to start with a small saying about Eleanor Roosevelt, because she asked a pointed question a lot of years ago already, 60 years ago. And she said, where, after all, do universal human rights begin? And she posed that question in address to the United Nations, celebrating the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. And today I think we can ask the question, where, after all, does justice begin? And Eleanor Roosevelt was someone who put very big confidence in local communities. And she said that human rights begin, and I like to quote, in small places close at home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Yet they are the world of the individual person, the neighborhood he lives in, the school or the college he attends, the factory, the farm or office where he works. Such are the places where every man and woman and child seeks equal justice, equal opportunity, equal dignity without discrimination. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere. And without concerted citizen action to uphold them close to home, we shall look in vain for progress in the larger world, unquote. So I cannot imagine that any other words describing our efforts to improve access to justice globally are more accurately. And as a fact, as a deputy mayor of the city of The Hague, we are also working on this in this neighborhood. So we really think that the global issues must be solved and can be solved in the local area. And that's not for nothing that our political program for these 4 years, it is called, I have it here, the City of Opportunities and Ambition, as I can translate it right. It's one of the 4 pillars which is built on is everyone must be able to, or everyone can participate in society. And access to justice is a very big part of this. We are working this in 2 ways. The Hague is, of course, proud to be home of the international courts, to more than 200 international organizations, 30,000 people working on peace and justice on a daily basis in our city. And we cherish that. It's very important for our ecosystem to work together on a safer and better world. We are very proud of having peace and justice in our arms, in our coat of arms of the city. It has been in use since the Global Peace Conference in 1899. So we are committed to promoting peace and justice, and that's what we do. However, and that's the second thing I'd like to stress, is we are not only the platform on global justice, we also intend to deliver local justice to our citizens. We have an example, it's called Buurtrechter, Neighborhood Judge, an initiative by the Council of the municipality and the Council for the Judiciary at our municipality, which brings justice literally back home to our citizens. And instead of taking justice issues to court, the court goes into the neighborhoods, and that significantly lowers the threshold for people and for citizens to get their right on small justice issues. And it is sometimes a very small thing between neighbors or whatsoever. And it's in fact more arbitration than it's justice, but it works very good. And we have a very new initiative together with the Hague Institute for International Law. Research has shown that it is for a lot of people almost impossible to get their right, because the whole system of advocacy and judges it's too stressy, it's too difficult for a lot of people to find it. And what our initiative does is we commit improving access to justice, and we have initiated the approach to assess citizens' justice needs with an innovative research method. So we go into the city, we ask everyone, what are your problems, what are the needs you have, and then we try to find a solution for that. That's this project just started, and we're working on this at the moment. I'm very proud of this cooperation. So in this way, we like to keep up with these words of Eleanor Roosevelt, change locally, close to home, on also bigger issues. So that's my
Thank
first
you
remark.
very much.
Thank you.
It's very interesting, this pairing of international engagement and local change. And I think that may be a theme that we hear from others as well. Diani, if I can turn to you from another government perspective, this time a national government. Your government has in recent years been making some very bold commitments to justice. Tell us a little bit about those commitments, how they've come about, and how you're making them a reality.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. So, I think in terms of the SDGs, Indonesia is considered an advanced country for SDGs planning and implementation. As you know that Indonesia now is the second time to report for the voluntary national review in 2019, and in 2017 voluntary national review, we showed that we have a concrete investment plans, investment gaps, priority projects, and sectors. So this also include the SDGs 16 sectors, which Indonesia also invited to share the experience on the SDGs 16 plus at the forum conducted by the NYU in New York. And how that we put into the commitment, how to build the gap between for the justice, we already put to integrate and mainstream more relevant targets and indicators of SDGs into our upcoming national medium plan to 2020-2024, and also in our annual government plan for 2020. But actually, before the SDGs started, Indonesia also has been implementing our national strategy on the access to justice since 2009. And also, we already launched legal aid law in 2011. And now, less than 4 years after the SDGs was launched, Indonesia country-wide legal aid grant has assisted thousands of legal representation for disadvantaged individuals. Like in 2018, that total 405 legal aid organizations that received this grant were provided for those who otherwise could not afford one. And with the budget around 48 million rupiah, the legal aid organization were served 92,000 beneficiaries. And the budget also increased in 2019 with 53 million rupiah. We believe that it is not enough, but at least that we started how that we promote the access to justice. And not only that, out of national strategy on access to justice, also put important role of the customary law and court to provide justice for isolated and remote communities that still put high respect to customary law and indigenous people. So I would like also to raise about how to relate between the open government partnership and the access to justice. Because if we know that the OGP has 4 principles. First, about the public participation. Second, about the bureaucracy reform. Third, about the public service innovation. And the fourth is about the public information access. And how we implement and relate between the OGP and then with the access to justice. In terms of the public participation, so the government sees that the citizen involvement is a basic principle to ensure that people have the opportunity to be involved in the decision-making process of the government development programs through the implementation of disclosure information based on our law number 14, 2008, that managed by Disclosure Information Commission together with the CSOs. The second one, about the bureaucracy reform, it reflects from various agendas to improve access to justice. It is reflected that our democracy index in Indonesia shows positive outlook that we get score 72.11 in 2017. And also for the anti-corruption behavior index, that the civil society has already good understanding about the anti-corruption value, that we got 3.66 out from 4. And not only that, with regard to integrity assessment, which involve ministries, institutions, and regional government in terms of the budget management, bribery cases, whistleblower, nepotism in the recruitment, done by the Anti-Corruption Commission, the score is 68 out of 100 in 2011. And that's closer to 100, that lower corruption risk. The third one, about the public service innovation. In 2016, we already launched what we call the Law on Persons with Disabilities. So we involve 5 main ministries and also organizations from the disabilities. And one of the commitments that Ministry of Public Works and Housing initiates the development of infrastructure that responsive on disabilities. And the last one, about the public information access. I think last Tuesday, we already presented about our effort in developing the Access to Justice Index. So the Ministry of Law and Human Rights has legal aid database information system called Sitbankum. And the Sitbankum function is also being expanded and improved so that entire reporting and administration process, monitoring and evaluation, and legal aid providers verification can be done by online. And also, I can say that the Sitbankum is a form of government transparency in implementing the legal aid programs. And it shows that Indonesia has given serious commitment and action. And this commitment reflects in our government annual plan and also the annual state budget. So, in addition that the Indonesia government realizes that development is achieved through collaboration with different and many stakeholders. And SDGs has strengthened our understanding that government should work with non-state actors as well, as it was presented, as I already mentioned, that the collaborative partnership between our Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Law and Human Rights, Central Statistic Bureau, and Indonesia's consortium of the Access to Justice. And the purpose or the goal of this Access to Justice Index will be as a tool to measure, especially our SDGs 16.3 target that state must ensure the access to justice for all. Meaning that the OGP and SDGs has a very important elements to uphold access to justice efforts in Indonesia, and Goal 16 is consistently aligned with our national priorities that are strongly in favor of combating violence, creating safe environment for communities, providing equal access to justice for all, strengthening the institutions that are transparent, accountable, participative, and anti-corruption.
Thank you very much. Very ambitious plan on the part of your government, and quite interesting to hear about how you're using the Open Government Partnership as a framework to organize this work. Access to justice is such a large agenda, and coming at it through the OGP agenda enables you to focus it, and also provides this basis for collaboration, because OGP really requires that collaborative approach with civil society and government. So that's a really interesting process for developing commitments. We'll come back and maybe talk about it some more. Monica, I want to turn to you and hear about the Stand for Her Land campaign that Landesa and other partners have launched. And this is an interesting effort to make a commitment, but importantly, see implementation of a commitment. We have a big challenge, of course, with good laws on the books sometimes, but very little enforcement and implementation. As I understand it, that's what this campaign is looking to do, translate a commitment in law into action and reality for people. Tell us a little bit about that, how the campaign is coming together, and how others can get involved with this commitment.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. First of all, I can say that land is power, land is destiny, land is life, land is status, and land is love. So we have just launched the campaign on the Stand for Her Land, Women Land Rights Global Campaign to bridge the gap between law and practice. In half of all countries around the world, women experience gender discrimination in their rights to land. And therefore, this is a campaign affecting real impact through targeted advocacy within countries to drive meaningful, tangible, lasting change on the ground. Landesa, along with his founding partners, have been working on strengthening women's land rights for years. And some of these founding members include the Hague Commission, the Habitat for Humanity, the Global Land Tool Network partners who have more than 200 members from different countries, and also the World Bank. And for Landesa specifically, we champion and work to secure land rights for millions of world's poorest, mostly rural women and men, to provide opportunity and also promote social justice. But all these partners, significantly, there's evidence and research showing that women have been disadvantaged compared to men. For rural women, we know that land is often the most important household asset for supporting agriculture production and providing food security and nutrition. And therefore, one of the important parts of Landesa and its partners is to help achieve justice for these women to ensure equal access to and also secure land rights. Evidence has shown that when women have secure rights to land, it's more likely the opportunities will emerge to break the cycle of poverty and also to improve the lives of women and their families, not only their families, but the whole communities. So justice delayed is justice denied. Take, for example, the sub-Saharan Africa. More than half of them, the women, still have trouble accessing land due to discriminative legal and cultural norms. But almost more than 7% of women live in rural areas. These are the women who are farmers. They are feeding Africa. But the same women are excluded from owning and accessing land. And there are also other more vulnerable and disadvantaged women, like widows. You find they're also chased away from their land, sometimes with lazy in-laws waiting for this opportunity to happen, sometimes discriminatory inheritance laws, sometimes corruption of culture. because in some of our culture, there is actually value of respecting widows, but sometimes there is this corruption of culture. And a woman's land rights are very essential. And also, when I'm talking about women, sometimes people think the other woman, but I'm talking about our sisters. I'm talking about our daughters. I'm talking about our mothers. In Swahili, there is a saying, nani kama mama. Dialect translations like, who like mama? No one is like a mother. Because our mother are very important in our lives, but the same mothers are the ones we are discriminating them to own land. So this campaign is very important, committed to bridge the gap. In some countries, there are very good laws. Even in Tanzania, we have progressive laws. But also, evidence shows, even where laws protect women's rights to own, use, manage, and inherit land, women sometimes are prevented from accessing their rights lands due to a number of social discriminatory customs. And so the global campaign, Stand for Her Land, aims to close this gap between law and practice worldwide so that millions of women can realize their rights in their daily lives. In Tanzania, actually, is a pilot project where we have started. There are more than 26 civil society. We've started planning sessions. We currently have our strategic plan. We have our model on how we are going to work. And also, what we have decided, we have a chair of the campaign. Tanzania Women Lawyers Association is the chair, and Landesa Tanzania is the secretariat. And also, because this is not something new, we have been working to strengthen women's land rights. The organization have discussed and came up with some of priorities, what we are going to do. Some of the priorities in Tanzania is to make sure that we empower women to understand the laws and have choices. For women's empowerment, the social relations around property need to be considered to understand which rights and values are there. What do they want? So it's not going to be one way, but to promote both individual and matrimonial ownership of land and property rights. Already there are organizations which are working on that, and something tremendous going on, people understanding, because you have the law, joint property is legal in Tanzania for couples. So we want to promote that. We want people to know and have a choice. If they want to own, to have certificate of occupancy, individual, that's right. And also they can, to know, it's not all having a paper, a certificate. Sometimes they're asking, I have a paper, then what? They need to know what they can use that, the value of that paper. It's not necessary for loan, but there are a lot of things which can be done. And also we want to promote women's land rights in communal-owned pastoralist communities. We have civil society working with pastoralist communities. It's not about individual ownership. It's about community ownership. But we want also to look on gender issues within the communal ownership. There are also other women that would like to own land as a group or as a cooperative. That's also something which is an option. But also we want to raise their voices, voices of widows. And this, we have realized in Tanzania, there are also young widows, child widows, because of the child marriage. What are their rights? What can we do for that?
So it's an interesting parallel, I hear, in a way, with what Saskia said at the outset about we've got these global norms, but they need to be implemented locally. And it's very much what we see going on with this campaign, a global campaign, bringing resources and an agenda, but then local particularities that you are pursuing to advance justice in this area and realize this commitment.
Perfect. And also because we have the global and the national, the global campaign will raise voices of the country coalitions to make change not only at home, but to influence global actors to invest in closing the gap between law and practice.
That's a great transition to you, Marc, and the Paris Peace Forum, and the work that you're doing there to bring global leaders to this agenda. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that commitment. The forum is itself, in a way, a commitment. It's also a platform for more commitments.
Absolutely, and it's a platform for Monica, especially, but I'd say also to Diani and Saskia and Gérardine here to really try to scale up their project, to make their project make a big step forward. Because when we created the forum last year with the impetus of President Macron, the idea was really on the century anniversary of the end of the First World War, not only to be a big commemoration, but also to make heads of state, all these heads of state, heads of international organizations, but all actors of governance, cities, NGOs coming to Paris, also to commit. And that's why we created the Paris Peace Forum as a new global platform for governance project, because we see worrying to the tendencies, not only in the field of justice, but in terms of international cooperation. Every multilateral institutions in The Hague, of course, we can see that the institutions here are facing criticisms, are being attacked. But more generally in Paris, we have UNESCO. You can see, of course, with the EU what's going on with the Brexit, or in Strasbourg with the Council of Europe. So all these multilateral institutions that help shaping the world, having a rule-based order, are under attack, and we see that we're losing the race against climate change. Internet has become a jungle. We are seeing more and more trade wars. Inequalities are rising. So in this context, we thought that we should engage all these people, not only in commemoration, but also on substance. And so what we tried to do was to bridge the gap between heads of state, political leaders, decision makers, and those who bring the solutions, because we know the problems. We have the diagnosis. We know that justice for all is not yet a reality. But it's great to do a debate on it. What we need are the right solutions to answer to this challenge. And so at the Paris Peace Forum from 11 to 13 November last year, we had 120 project leaders who showcased their project. And what we did is, after the opening ceremony, where we had these 65 heads of state gathering to show that there's a constituency for multilateralism, we brought them to meet the project leaders. And we had some hearing, we had some pitches from project leaders. We had, for example, Uhuru Kenyatta, president of Kenya, who met a project leader from Kenya, and the project leader said, well, look, I did in 2 minutes what I would have done in 3 years' time. So, and that's why I say, this is your place, because the idea is really to push leaders to make a big commitment and to very support a concrete solution. And so that's what we try to do at the Paris Peace Forum. And of course, the link between all the projects is governance, it's standards, new norms, mechanism, but we are interested by all SDGs areas. So we have different villages: peace and security, development, environment, new technologies, economy, culture, and education. And actually, if we have to commit for the future, because that's what we tried to do last year, it would be, of course, to invite project leaders here. And I met so many beautiful projects in the forum in these 3 days, I should say, to apply in our call for projects, because till the end of May, we have a call for projects on parispeaceforum.org. And if you want to move forward the theme of justice, a good place to do it is to come to the Paris Peace Forum and engage with the head of state who will invite again. And we are working with President Macron to have, once again, a lot of heads of state from every country. So bring your project, but bring also your head of state if you can help us. So basically, that's what we're trying to do, not only want to commit for, having more justice themes at the next Paris Peace Forum, but as you may know, we selected 10 projects that we're supporting throughout the year to do, so that the forum is not only an event but also a process. And one of these projects is the World Justice Project from Mexico, and I see some representatives of this project here. Data to Combat Torture, which is a fascinating project that wants to really implement the norms, the rules, because Mexico adheres, is a member of all conventions against torture. But when you look at what's happening in the police, in prisons, torture is widely disseminated. So there are some norms, and here we see that there's a problem in terms of implementing them, and they're doing a great job to fight against this phenomenon. And my idea for the next Paris Peace Forum would be to invite the new Mexican president and to make the president meet the project that is developed by our Mexican friends and supported by this beautiful organization you lead, Elizabeth.
Thank you. We can speak personally from the perspective of WJP that it's been a very valuable forum and process, as you say, of support throughout the year. But it's interesting, too, to think, though, when bold commitments and statements are made at summits of heads of state, then the challenge, the hard work comes when folks like Diani have to roll up their sleeves in a planning ministry and actually implement those commitments, find the budget, mobilize the resources of city governments to actually deliver on those commitments. So maybe we'll circle back and hear your perspectives on that. First, I want to turn to Jerry and hear about the perspective of another kind of international organization and another kind of commitment. You are at an institution that is the home or the guarantor of a number of commitments in the form of treaties. And treaties then have to be translated into national laws and then, of course, actually implemented. Tell us a little bit about the Hague Conference, what it does that can help bridge the justice gap, what commitments you would like to see your states, member state governments making in the context of the conference.
Thank you, Betsy, and good morning. I work with the Permanent Bureau of the Hague Conference on Private International Law, and we're the oldest international organization based in the beautiful city of The Hague. We are a global organization. We convene countries to come together, negotiate, and agree on different instruments, we call them. And these treaties, they relate to cross-border civil and commercial issues. These affect individuals, families, and organizations, so really the people on the ground. Just some context, though. Today, we live in a world where 245 million people are international migrants. They live outside of the borders of the countries that they would call home. Now, if these people were just one country in and of themselves, they would displace Brazil as the 5th most populous country in the world. That's the number of people living outside of the borders of the nationality. Now, when we turn to children, there are actually 3 heart-rending figures. The first is that at the end of 2017, some 14 million children were displaced across borders as refugees or asylum seekers. Now, this number is larger than the entire population of Guinea. An estimated 231 million people are affected by natural disasters and other climate-related catastrophes approximately 60 million of which are children, again, in these cross-border situations. So just the number of children, that exceeds the entire population of Spain. That's the number of children. Now, according to the International Labour Organization, 1.2 million children are trafficked for labor and sexual exploitation every year. So in the course of our conversation this morning, 140 children will be trafficked across borders for these reasons. Now, we live then in a world that's increasingly VUCA. It is volatile, it is uncertain, it is complex, it is ambiguous. As the oldest international organization in The Hague, we recognize that sometimes law and international law cannot translate into justice without proper implementation, and that's where we're looking at it. So what we do, we have two huge, large baskets of agreements. We gather member states, contracting parties together, and we focus on two things. The first one is capacity building in means of cross-border access to justice. And the second one is the facilitation of effective cross-border dispute settlement. And through those two, we try then to get end-to-end access to justice, not just for people that can afford it, but for people on the ground. Now, how do we commit to that? Our work has maybe 3 different strands, and the first one is normative. So we gather, as Marc does at the Paris Peace Forum, heads of state delegations to diplomatic sessions. We get them to sit down and say, how will we deal with these issues? How can we all agree on a way going forward? We inscribe those things down on paper, and we try to get states to sign up to these obligations. One of the projects we're having is called the Judgment Project, and in June of this year, we will convene more than 80 member states with their delegations to try and conclude an agreement on the recognition of and enforcement of civil judgments across borders. The second thing that we do is to assist in the proper and effective implementation of these agreements, as Betsy pointed out. It's great to have these treaties, but what we need is actually implementing those obligations so that you and I and everybody else on the street, our brothers and sisters, as Monica pointed out, will have those means of access to justice. And the way we do that is through helping with providing expertise for enabling legislation, to connect 2 member states or 2 contracting parties that can help each other. We have judicial training, we have regular contact and follow-up with the stakeholders, and we try to make information available as much as possible. Which then leads us to the third route, which is the grassroots level. And here, we are old, we're 126 years old this year, and we are very much aware that our agreements at the Hague Conference affect the lives of millions of people across the world. And it's very important not to be arrogant enough at the government level to say we know what's best for our people, but to actually ask the people, how do things work? And I think I heard in a plenary session, I think it was yesterday, it's very important to know your rights. People need to know what rights do they have, how to implement them, and the means for that. And so we try to make the information available as widely as possible. One of the projects that we have is the International Database for Cases Relating to Children. I call it INCADAT. And INCADAT provides basically a database for free to anyone in a family law or child protection situation that needs access to what does the law say? How can I use the law in my situation? How do I access justice? So that's what we do. And in terms of commitments, basically, I know the questions about commitments from states, but I think it's a multi-sectoral, multilateral kind of commitment that we need. From states, we need not just political will, but political investment to see this from end to end. So don't just sign up to treaties, but implement them and make sure the obligations actually are fulfilled. From the private sector, we need the resources, the network, the know-how. I mean, there's no need to keep reinventing the wheel. We just get everybody together. From civil society, we'd like to hear your voices. We want to know what projects speak from your heart. Are our conventions working for you? If they are not, can we improve them? Can we somehow make things better? And from ourselves, from my organization, our commitment is to sit and to listen and to bring these threads together. We tie them into a skein and a tapestry that can work so that we future-proof ourselves and our children, not just for today, but for many years to come. So that's what we're doing, and that's a commitment.
Excellent, we'll take that. I want to open to the audience for at least one or two questions, but maybe while folks are preparing those, an immediate follow-up for you, Marc, thinking about your reference to the private sector, Jerry. The private sector played a role in the Paris Peace Forum as well. What commitments did you see them making? What do you think they can bring to this justice agenda?
Of course, the Paris Peace Forum gathered all actors of governance. And we have a good representations here, but we don't have people from the business sector who were widely represented at the forum, both as partners because they helped the forum happen, but also as actors of governance, bringing solutions, bringing new norms. And I want to take this example of Microsoft that used the Paris Peace Forum to push forward a call for trust and security in the cyberspace that it launched along with the French government, showing that companies, these actors of governance, see that they cannot deal with the challenges they face on their own. They need governments, they need a civil society. And the call for security and trust in the cyberspace now was signed by 60 states, 400 companies, 500 representatives from the civil society. It was a collaborative process of companies, of course, were present at the Paris Peace Forum, and we want to have them even more because who think we can face the fight against climate change without them, or preserving biodiversity, or regulating the internet or artificial intelligence without companies. It would be just absurd. We need them, but we also need all other actors, like cities, like governments, international organizations, to work together. So it's a true multi-stakeholder initiative, and companies have their role to play, definitely.
Okay, excellent. Let me turn to the audience and see if there are any questions for our panel, or I will continue to pepper you with questions.
Can I respond with
yes, please
Monica? It's about that. I appreciate with your work and how that to promote for the land rights. I can share that experience in Indonesia because we put the land certification as our national priority. That directly that our presidents takes a target for 5 years around 4 million certification for people all around of Indonesia. So it means that before that some people doesn't have such kind of because land, I agree with you, land is very important for the older people, especially of course for the poor people. And by having the certification, land certification, so they can fertilize the land, and then hopefully that can overcome from the poverty. And then, of course, that it is not only by giving the land certification, but also how the local government monitor about for this land certification, not to be loan for the people to get credit from the bank. So I think that's among others that how did the Indonesian government to put the land certification as our national priority. Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you better take the Stand for Her Land campaign to Indonesia next. You'll have a good partner in the government there. Many of you have talked about the importance of collaboration in mobilizing the political will for making commitments, and then importantly for implementing commitments. And I guess I wonder if I could just invite anyone who has thoughts about effective collaborations and the role that they play in commitments to comment on that. Sure, Jerry?
Thanks, Betsy. That's a great question, actually. And what I see, at least, and what I've done is there's a lot of collaboration that we'd like to see more of. With the more traditional institutions, so the intergovernmental, intergovernmental organizations, and those in new spaces, so in startups, in private sector, what I'm doing, for example, with our portfolios is to go out into new spaces, such as satellite technology, identity solutions through digital ledger technology, to see if some sort of implementing mechanism can be come up with together. The issue is that we have so much expertise, and it's just in such disparate areas that I think that collaboration is really important. So it's not just a matter of speaking with governments, as Marc pointed out. We really need to get resources from everybody, whether they're financial or political or expertise. Everything together makes a tapestry which works, and without that collaboration, it does not work. And I think that's very important for us as we go forward. Mm-hmm. Perhaps Marc will agree.
The forum, the Paris Peace Forum, as I said earlier, is not only an event, it's a process. And when you speak about process, you speak about bringing people together and work together. And that's why we decided to support the World Justice Project from Mexico on data to combat torture. And so we set up this scale-up committee, that's how we call it, because that really, it's a goal, made of 10 people from development agencies, from the World Bank, from the private sector, from NGOs, who put together their network to provide political support, communication, venture support. They collaborate. And it's really fascinating to see all these energies coming together and really help these projects, these 10 projects, moving forward.
Great. Monica, your whole campaign is about collaboration to make a difference.
The whole campaign is about collaboration, and it's very important. For instance, in Tanzania, when we started discussion, we talked about trust. We have the model which is about also ethics, share of resources. We can share our resources together, but also passion and commitment, and walk the talk. Mm-hmm. During the discussions, members of the coalition say, not make this campaign a lip service, the usual, business as usual. No, let us together make sure that we are bridging the gap. Starting with me and you, as the change, as an individual, how are you treating women on issues of land rights? Your family members, are you also an advocate, ambassador of that? So it's not only about talking during meetings. How about yourself? How about your organization? Is just organization talking about the Women Land Rights Global Campaign, but doing this different thing? So we have discussed that, and I've said we have just launched the campaign, and we aim to roll out in 5 to 7 countries over the next 2 years. We are talking with other civil society groups in many countries to determine where the campaign will add most value. But so far, initial discussion, in addition to Tanzania, have included India, Kenya, Liberia, Uganda, Brazil. But the campaign is not very limited to this. We envision dozens of global partners and hundreds of country-based partners comprising country coalitions as the campaign grows. And also, what is very important, not only organization focusing on land rights, but we need to consider how foundation women land rights are on their own cause. So it means other organizations working in different areas, in different, education, food security, they're all connected to this issue. So we encourage you, everyone here and everyone who is listening, to go to the Stand for Her Land website and reach out to us to start the conversation about joining our efforts. It's www.standforherland.org. And this Stand for Her Land is a number 4, not instead of the word 4. So I encourage even those organizations who are not working exclusively on the land rights to consider joining us. We need you. We need your organization. We need you to support this. The collaboration together, unity is power. Stand for her rights, her better future.
Okay, a coffee awaits, so we're going to wrap up here, but I want to turn to you, Diani, and finally Saskia. Diani, you mentioned in our earlier conversation also this importance of trust in realizing commitments. Tell us a little bit about that.
About SDGs 16 plus?
Yeah, no, and trust.
Trust, okay. I would like also to add about the collaboration. I think since that 2015 that Indonesia has a big commitment in terms of the implementation of the SDGs, our government now in the states that how to mobilize the resources, financing, how to finance the implementation of SDGs. So the collaboration and trust is very important. So that's why in our next midterm plan, we already initiate what we call the SDGs investment in Indonesia, and how we would like to collaborate to mobilize the resource funding from the philanthropy and business actors, and also we have the religious social funds, and also how that to utilize the Muslim social fund to support and contribute for the implementation of SDGs. Talking about trust, I think since that in the reform era in 1998, this is very important that how to collaborate with not only with among the government, line ministry, but also with the civil society and also with other stakeholders. Means that in Indonesia now, the collaboration in terms of the policy making process now is being progress, and then how we put into the our national policy. And I think this is the essence of the collaboration means that the trust, building the trust is very important, but also how to show the concrete implementation is the most important. And how we collaborate in decision-making process is very also important. I think this is what is still like what we had in develop the access to justice index. We give a big space to our colleague from the civil society to develop what we call of the access to justice index. And once that we already developed, so this is the obligation of the government to implement through the intervention of the policy, planning and budgeting. Of course, that in the last Tuesday discussion, we still in ongoing progress, and hopefully that our colleague from the civil society said they have a target this year. Hopefully that this index can be launched, and then this is the obligation of the government to put how to ensure that the implementation of the index, access to justice index, can be implemented not only at the central level but also at the local government. Because we already modality, first our presidential decree that form about the implementation of SDGs, not only with the government but also with all the non-state actors by in implementing the 4 pillars: economic pillars, environment, social, and also governance. And we put all the non-state actor in each pillar. How we conduct a discussion, and then how we put together for the planning every year. I think this is one of the form of the trust that we do in Indonesia.
So collaboration helps you develop better plans and then implement them more effectively. Saskia, do you want to wrap us up here with some final thoughts about how collaboration helps the municipality deliver on its promises for justice?
Yes, I think collaboration, it is very important, and also knowledge sharing and knowing what are the reasons behind that some people have access to justice and others don't. And one point I like to make is what's not said here already, is that should law be reinvented in a way? I think a lot of people don't have access, and this gap is getting bigger and bigger because they don't have the right information. They don't understand the language of law. Sometimes it's a question of money. It's too expensive to in some countries, even here, to find your justice. So that's the question that must be answered also, and I think we should collaborate on this. How can law be made more user-friendly, more understandable for people who don't have this access that they normally have? And that's maybe different in every country. When I compare Holland to the things you're talking about in Tanzania or wherever, then there's quite different problems. And in fact, in Holland, everything is very good, I must say. There's not much, people know a lot, the trust is big, we are a safe country, reliable government, etc. But that's not everywhere in the world. And even here, there are a lot of people who don't have the access they need, and this gap is getting bigger and bigger. So we must talk about reinventing law, and also use modern techniques maybe in this. I'm thinking about artificial intelligence, and in a good way, of course, with privacy, with all regulations which are needed in these. That's this discussion we have to do.
Excellent. Well, that's a good segue to our working sessions following the coffee break, where we can roll up our sleeves and try to do some of that sharing across sectors. Let me just summarize maybe what I'm hearing as some final thoughts about the themes that make for good commitments, and importantly, for actual implementation of those commitments. So the value of this synergy between international platforms and organizations and local implementation and commitment and realization in people's lives, the value of collaboration, the importance of political will, and collaboration can help generate that political will, the importance of resources and budget to actually make things happen, and importantly, as you said, Monica, the follow-up, the walk the talk on these commitments. So with that charge, please join me in thanking the panel here for a really stimulating discussion this morning. And coffee is in the lobby, and then working sessions to follow.